Never thought I would share my story. But here I am. I was married to my wife for 22 years before she decided to cheat on me with someone. I was blindsided by never even saw it coming. My wife works as a manager for a large restaurant and I work for a major tech company. She has been at her job for just over 13 years before that. She was a waitress for the same company. Not many people make that transition from a waitress to a manager of the restaurant. We have 2 children, both girls who are freshmen in college, but they don't have any idea what their mother has done when she first started as a manager of the restaurant. She was quite busy, but she always found time to reach out to me when she was on a break or when she took her lunch break. But over the years that started to diminish, but I didn't make a fuss about it. I expected it. I just tried to give her as much support as possible because being in the restaurant business can be quite stressful. But what I did not expect was her coming home after a long shift and then going back out to hang out with some of her coworkers. It didn't bother me at first because I just figured she was letting off some steam after a stressful day at the restaurant. This went on for about 6 months before I said something to her. I asked her what was going on and I complained that we don't spend a lot of time together. Am I missing something? She goes on to say no, nothing is going on. I go out with my coworkers, we chat and talk about what happened at work, maybe have a drink and that's it. I left it at that and I know some of her coworkers from that day on. I never questioned her about her going out after work, but I started going to the restaurant for lunch when I knew she was working. I didn't see anything suspicious. She was busy helping, like always, because in some situations, some of her coworkers called off. I did this like for 2 weeks. Then I stopped, but her going out with her coworkers after work didn't stop. But after about 3 weeks after me going to the restaurant for lunch, she would come home. We would have dinner, go out to a movie and on occasion go see a live band. This went on for about 4 months. She wasn't really hanging out with her coworkers anymore after work. Then all of a sudden she started doing it again. But this time it was different. She started coming home late, really late. So this time when I confronted her, I got on her face and asked her what the hell is going on and told her, don't give me a bullshit answer either. She screams back at me and says, damn it, I am not doing anything. I said you are lying to me. I said to her, when is it okay for you to come home at 2 in the morning when you have a husband at home? Her response was, are you my dad? Now, all I had in my mind was rage at her answer. I walked away. I went back to the bedroom and tried to go back to sleep but couldn't. A few hours later I got up for work. She on the other hand was sound asleep. I didn't even wake her when I left on the way to work. I get a text from her saying have a good day. I love you. I didn't respond. I was still too angry. I got off work early and went straight to the restaurant. When I pulled into the restaurant's parking lot, I didn't see my wife's car. I didn't get out. I drove home and she wasn't there either. I did not text her or call her. I had the phone number of one of her coworkers and just asked her was my wife working today. Well, she didn't respond either. So I waited and waited. At about 9 p.m. she comes strolling through the door in her work clothes and asked me how my day was. I said my day was productive. I did not mention that I got off work early and I did not mention that I drove by the restaurant. We talked a bit, had dinner and watched a movie. We together and one of our kids called and we talked to her a bit. Fast forward 3 weeks and her going out has simmered down just a tad. But in the back of my mind ever since she made that statement, "Are you my dad?" I have been suspicious. One day while I was at work, I get a text from one of my wife's coworkers. I was a little perplexed as to why she sent me a text after all. When I sent her a text a few weeks back, she didn't respond. She indicated in the text that she wanted to come by the office and talk to me. I said, "Okay, but may I ask what was this about?" Well, she didn't want to discuss it over the phone. She wanted to come talk to me face to face. I told her to meet me for lunch in our cafeteria at about 1:30 p.m. She walks in with her husband and I was a bit surprised by that. She begins to tell me that my wife has been cheating on me with a regular customer who comes into the restaurant. All I could do was shake my head. She kept apologizing. She's known for a bit but didn't say anything. She went home and told her husband and her husband flat out said you have to tell him. Then she says my wife has another phone that she keeps at work, but she never brings it home. I interrupted and asked, "She has another phone?" She says, "Yep, that's how she talks to this guy." I was completely blown away. I couldn't believe it. Then I asked her friend, "Does she know anything else about the guy my wife was cheating with?" The only thing she knows is he has a lot of money and owns a few businesses. Then I asked her, "Does she know where this guy stays?" And she said, "No, she doesn't." I politely told them I had to get back to work and thanked them both for letting me know. I talked to my boss about what I was just told. You should have seen his face. Then he says, "If you need time away from work, just say it." I just stood there. Everything was a blur. I was angry and confused. What was I supposed to do? Right this moment, my boss intervenes and says, "Listen, does your wife know that your friend came and told you about what she has been up to?" I said, "I don't think so." Then he pulls out his phone and calls his sister, who happens to know a divorce attorney here in the Atlanta area. So my boss gives me a phone number and tells me to call as soon as possible after that. My boss sent me home and all I could think about was how she could betray me like that. But at the same time I had to calm down and think. Later that night, my wife comes home and asks me how my day was. I almost hesitated. But I said it was a horrible day for me. Then she asked me why. And all I told her was my boss was upset. I didn't complete a project in the allotted time frame and I had to work on it tonight. The next morning, I called the divorce attorney my boss gave me. He told me to come in for a consultation so he can explain what the process is and what my options are. The attorney asked me, "How long have we been married?" I told him 22 years and asked me, "How did I find out my wife was cheating?" I simply told him that one of her coworkers and her husband told me. He looks at me and simply says that's not good enough. We need proof. He says, if you want to protect yourself, you need proof. He then asked me, how did my finances look? And I basically told him I am on a strict budget. The attorney then inquires about our assets. I told him I have a 401k, some savings, the house we own together and vehicles. Then I tell him we have 2 kids in college and he asked me, do they know? I said no, they don't. I told the attorney I don't plan on telling them just yet. After the meeting, I called my boss and told him about the meeting. He asked, do you have anywhere to go until this is all sorted out? I told him no, I don't. Then he says, look, don't do anything stupid. I know you are hurting right now, but try to think clearly. He says if you need a place to stay, my sister and I own a home together. Our mother left it to us. I thanked him and headed home. It was about 4 p.m. and my wife's car was in the driveway, which was surprising because she doesn't usually get home from work until after 7 p.m. On most nights when I walked in the door, she was in nowhere to be found. I looked in every part of our house and I didn't see her. I went back outside to see if she was in the backyard or something. But to my surprise, she wasn't. My neighbor saw me and he said that she got in the car with someone and they left. He indicated he has never seen this person before. And I thanked him right away. I did some research and found a private investigator in the area in the 22 years. I have been married to this woman. She has never ever left her car in the driveway and had someone come pick her up and not tell me. I called a private investigator and left a voicemail. What happened next was practically the end of our marriage. My wife did not come home last night and she did not even contact me, nothing. Whatever that bitch has to say, she can save it. I didn't even contact her at all. But I text my daughters and asked them, when was the last time they talked to their mother? Both of them said last night. After that, it was about 9 in the morning, I went straight over to the private investigator's office and walked in. He simply asked, what do I need? I asked him, what would this cost me? And he said $3,000 to start. But he did say if he feels I have what I need, he will stop the investigation and wouldn't charge me any additional fees. I proceeded to give him the restaurant's address, her vehicle and license plate information, and a photo of her and a few of her coworkers. He then tells me he will get started tonight and will let me know whatever he finds right away. After meeting with the private investigator, I called my boss to see if I can take him up on his offer at crashing at his place until this is all sorted out. He agreed and my wife wasn't home. So I started packing some things. I didn't want to leave the house, but I still had a lot of rage in me. So I left. My boss met me over there and told me to stay as long as I need. I told him I hired a private investigator. Then he says, don't tell your kids yet. It's not the right time. Fast forward a few hours. I never got a call or a text from my wife asking where I was. Am I coming home? Nothing. At about 11 Amy get a link from my private investigator to his Google Drive. It's a video of my wife leaving work in her work clothes. She then drives to a park where she meets a man and they kiss. Then she gets in his car with him and they are parked in a very secluded area of the park and they proceeded to have sex. There was another video of them getting out of a pool together and they were both half naked. But that's all I needed to see. All I can say is that private investigator made a quick $3,000 for that. As soon as I saw that, I went right down to the lawyer's office with the footage and told him to file for divorce based on adultery. My lawyer said that will probably kill any chance of getting any kind of alimony, especially here in Georgia where cheating can affect the outcome of alimony. So fast forward a month, my ex-wife has her own lawyer. She is going after alimony and the house, and my 2 children are devastated and they haven't talked to their mother since I told them the day of the divorce. Hearing my wife got hammered. She didn't get a dime of alimony. She didn't get any of my retirement, but she will get 20% of the proceeds. When the house sells, I get the rest. When the house sold, I ended up with about $210,000 in cash. She ended up with less than $40,000 and her daughters have alienated her for the time being. After we sold the house, I have never heard from or spoke to my ex-wife. I talk to my daughters at least 3 times a week and I don't even ask if they have talked to their mother. I ended up moving out of my boss's place and putting a down payment on another home big enough for me and for my daughters. When they come home for the holidays, I later learned who my wife's AP was. He owned a few gas stations in the area. Plus he came from a wealthy family. Anyway, I am sorry for the long read. My wife's infidelity hit me hard. Even after the divorce, I had to get my temper and rage under control. I am now seeing a therapist and my children are supporting me 100% in my opinion. I don't think he was a simp. I think what he did was not have his wife on a leash and let her have her freedom until her actions warranted his attention. When he confronted her, her response to his question made him dig a little, but it was someone else who had a conscience and told him about his wife's infidelity. I know a lot of people will say he shouldn't have left the house. Well, I think him leaving the house was a good move only because he had rage. He needed to get under control. Resorting to violence is never the answer unless his self-defense. Until next time.